Olá a todos e todas, é prazer estar com
Hello,
todos
everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you in this Talking Business event, Healthtech Brazilian, conceived in Harvard, created and sold in Brazil. I'm Jason Diet, the Vice President of the Global Hub at Uninter. It's a pleasure to welcome a couple of speakers today, two entrepreneurs whom I met a while ago, Deborah Alves and João Henrique. They're going to be talking to us today. They are co-founders of Cuidas. They are entrepreneurs at Alice. Before starting this event, I'd like to highlight that we are broadcasting it in two channels. In Portuguese and English, we have simultaneous translation to English at the Global Hub channel. I'd like to thank all Uninter schools, their deans that allowed this event to happen today. We focus in business, but it's also relevant for different areas and sectors. I'd like to ask you all who have any sort of interest to subscribe to our Global Hub YouTube channel, because you're going to be publishing events, and the next ones are going to be in April and May. Briefly, the format of this event is I'm going to have a quick opening now, then you're going to have a 40 minutes conversation with our speakers with the three stages of their life and careers. First, their personal trajectories and training, education. We're going to do that in Portuguese. Then the second block, you're going to talk about the expansion of professional contact networks. And you're going to do that in English for a couple of reasons. First of all, they studied abroad. They have a very good English. And just to show how important it is to draw an international path and open professional doors. So the third block is going to be the creation of their health tech startup in Brazil, Cuidas, that was acquired by Alice at the end of last year. We're going to spend like 20 minutes talking about that in Portuguese, and you're going to end with a Q&A from the audience. We're going to end our event at 8 p.m. Brazil time. So welcome, Deborah and João. I've known both of you. You have a powerful combination of talent, energy, and focus. I'm really impressed by that. But what really inspires me and makes me happy is to focus in making Brazil a better place. So before working at Alice, the first health manager in Brazil, it's a health manager. That's how I call it, the first one. So it's a health tech. And Alice just raised $125 million in their third round of financing. And despite their youth, they have a lot of miles and knowledge to share. Deborah, before founding Cuidas, she worked at the platform at Quora, a company based in Silicon Valley. She was a graduate student at Harvard. She co-founded Brasa, a nonprofit organization to empower the next generation of Brazilian leaders. When she was in school, she focused her studies in computer science and math. João, co-founder of Cuidas, he worked at Kraft Heinz in Chicago after graduating in Harvard College. He went to Chicago. He has a scholarship at Fundação Estudar, the George Paulo Lema Scholarship Fund, and the RAPS, the Sustainability and Political Action Network. He was elected the Harvard Undergraduate Brazilian Association twice. And with this introduction, let's start what is really interesting, your experience. First of all, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to ask you a question to both of you, something very basic. Can you talk a little bit about your background and your journey in college, starting with Deborah, please? Well, thank you so much, Jason, for the introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about me, about myself. Jason had already introduced me. I'm Deborah. I graduated in Harvard in math and computer science. Before that, I've been always enjoyed STEM. So I started programming, playing um, on the internet, and I started participating in internet math competitions. I represented Brazil in the Math Olympics, and that allowed me to continue studying computer science and math. As Jason said, I studied math and computer science. I participated in many Brazilian organizations like Brasa, some of them with João, not all of them. We have a very similar journey in college. After I graduated, I worked with Corda for a couple of years, and I came back to Brazil to be an entrepreneur. I think that's it. Quick question before passing the floor to João. How was your college graduation? Because in my experience, the difference between undergrad and graduate degree, very different. So what are the main difference between Brazil and the US, you mean, right? For undergrad, okay? Well, the main difference for me is the broadness, the completeness of the American undergrad. You're not there just to study, you're there to have a broad experience. You're there to study and study different subjects. I studied economics, I took musical theory, sculpting, and the life in college. We are encouraged to have extracurriculum activities like sports, music, whatever you can think about. And that's this broad experience is different from those who studied in Brazil. And João, about your journey, I know that you've received many scholarships, and I think that some people who had a really good luck are the ones who can go to Harvard only. So thank you all. Thank you for you who from Uninter. Briefly, I'm gonna introduce myself. My name is João Henrique. I'm Carioca, but I'm from the suburbs of Rio. And when we talk about having very good luck in life, in terms of finance background, I didn't, but I had a very strong family background in terms of culture. And my father, for example, he became a teacher so I could have scholarship in the schools he was working. So I could go to private schools in Rio. Somehow I had very good luck, but it wasn't because of money. I didn't have much money, but my dream actually was to be an army engineer. That was my dream. Maybe I thought that to be successful was being an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. So I like them, so I'm gonna be an engineer. And in the army, I could have a career with not much risk. So I was studying so much that I said maybe I could try to go to a university abroad. So I realized that it was very expensive. Like, for example, to apply to like 10 universities I spent like $10,000. I didn't have that money. So I found that the American Embassy in Brazil, they have an Education USA to grant scholarships for Brazilian, low-income Brazilians to apply for an American university. I had to be a very good student to be granted a scholarship. I got it, and I didn't have to pay anything for this process. Together with some sort of mentorship, like an advisory, that was very important for this process. And getting there, they call it like they have a liberal arts system that you have to decide on a focus area, but you have to study at least 8 hours per week of a different subject. So I realized that I didn't want to be an engineer, that I wanted to be a study sociology, but I also liked economics. So, and I also enjoyed learning language, so I got a certificate, a diploma in French as well. So what I can tell you is that we are very young to decide our career when we are 17. So we have to experiment. So before you decide what you want to do, you have to figure out things. So I realized I didn't like engineering, I like economics, I like sociology. So that was my path. There are some pros and cons. Of course, when you focus on one single subject and you do that for 4 or 5 years, maybe you have a deeper technical knowledge, but I like the idea of learning how to learn. For me, that was important to be exposed to different areas, to learn how to adapt, to get into the marketplace, and realize that I can learn how to uh, understand something that I have never seen before. So that's it. Perfect. Something that both of you did during the university, worked with a community of Brazilian students. And for me, something very interesting is that you created a very strong network of contacts, not only in Brazil, but also abroad. My question is, the next area you're going to focus on is in the business life. I mean, how you progressed. So can you talk a little bit more about your experience in school, throughout college with the Brazilian community, and the importance of this contact network that you started building during your undergrad, and how important it has been to you so far? Deborah and then Joan. Well, I think that the experience of moving to the US, going abroad, both of us together, we founded Brasa. We were part of the Brazil conference and the Brazilian organization of Harvard students, and we kind of did that together. And we both got a scholarship from Fundação Estudar to study abroad. And I think it started that before moving abroad from the Fundação Estudar, that's how I actually met João. It was the first contact that we started uh, to have. And then going to the university, we reconnected. It was, in the beginning, it was a small group of Brazilians, and we got really close to the people we met there doing the events and all sorts of people. I think this connection was really great. Um, Despite being abroad for a while, we had always been connected to Brazil. And the connections we had from Harvard helped us to start a business in Brazil. Um, Knowing people that really added us in our ventures and our professional life as a whole. Now, let me add, you've asked about the scholarships. I just mentioned one, right? So getting into this network topic, I think scholarship is a very good opportunity to broaden your network, because normally it comes from an institution with different fellows, and they're gonna be granting scholarships to future students. So we always get to know good people, and at the end of the day, you're going to have people from private sector, public sector, talents that get to know each other and that are in contact all the time. So for me, and I think for Deborah as well, the network was as important as the be granted the scholarship. Fundação Estudar was very strong. That's where I met Deborah, and the Cuidas founders. Actually, we met before, right? Um, it was granted the scholarship before arriving at the university. So all my summer jobs throughout my throughout college was through my contacts and mentors I met from the summer school to that, including my first job after graduating. Um, Part of my investors also came from Fundação Sudan. Those who invested money at Cuidas were people from Fundação Sudan, different fellows, and it marked our journey and the possibility of studying at a different place and the network of contacts and people who we decided to work together and those who funded our adventures. So it was an unbelievable network. And of course, Harvard has an unbelievable network, but it depends on where you're gonna go. So uh, to go back to come back to Brazil, it's very important to have the Fundação Sudan network, but also Harvard is very important. It opens doors everywhere you go. So I think that's how we developed our network. And then we created our own network, and that's Brasa. At the end of the day, Brasa, it became larger than what we expected. But we like to say that the mission is to empower the next generation of Brazilians for a better Brazil. So we try to empower people that are still in high school and want to move abroad, connect with students in Brazil, and those who had already graduated from college and want to help other people. We started from scratch, and now we have Brazil in more than 13 countries in more than like 80 universities. So it was an unbelievable network. We started knowing other people who were in the US, but not necessarily with Fundação Sudan or Harvard, and that expanded our network. So perfect. A lot of hard work, and then getting the opportunity of leveraging your first efforts.
Back to the international part of your careers before you moved back to Brazil and started as entrepreneurs. How did you find your first international jobs? How did that work?
João, do you want to start this time?
Sure. So, I mean, I was applying to a bunch of different jobs during my senior year, which is common when you graduated from college in the US. And then I had a stronger bond to Kraft Heinz because of my connections to Fundação Estudar and the 3G Capital folks. So at the end of the day, I had three options of places I could go. I was with offers from Burger King in Switzerland, Kraft Heinz in Chicago, and JP Morgan in New York. And then I decided I wanted to stay in the US for as long as my visa would allow, because that would be a good corporate experience to have in a lifetime. But then when deciding between Chicago and New York, I don't know, I feel like Chicago has more welcoming people, and I just felt more like at home, and I chose to go to Kraft Heinz. And for me, that was a great choice because I came in the company in a moment that they were just merging Kraft with Heinz. So there was a bunch of challenges to be solved. So I had the opportunity of, learning a lot in a very short period of time.
Super. Deborah?
Yeah, so it's funny because João said about how, Fundação Estudar gives a lot of network here in Brazil. And for me, my job, so was also, Fundação Estudar got me my first summer job, while Harvard Network got my second and third jobs, which were in the US. So it's like, you see like how I think I took advantage of both networks. Yeah, so I think my first job after I graduated was the same place I did my last summer internship. So both my second and third summer internships I got through Harvard, and they have like programs where they advertise positions for summer jobs in different companies. And I got through there and did like on-campus interviews. The interviewers actually go to the university to recruit. And that's how I got my summer jobs. And then I got my full-time offer after my last summer. And yeah, it was great because I got to have this, international experience, especially in software engineering. But then after 6 years in the US, I ended up coming back to Brazil, as you all know.
What can you describe? What were you working on when you were with Quora in Mountain View, California?
Yeah, so I was a software engineer in the platform team that they had at the time. More specifically, I worked with iOS applications. So I was basically worked in our iOS app for Quora. So I did a bunch of everything. I don't know, even as a software engineer in the mobile team, I did I did work in projects in a lot of areas in the company. When I joined Quora, we weren't 100 people yet, so it was still small. When I left, it wasn't also that big. It was less than 200 people. So it's still like, since it was smaller companies, you get to do a little bit of everything.
Sure. What's different, because you're in an innovation space in Brazil now, and you were in an innovation center when you're here in the US. What strikes you as similar and different between the innovation clusters that you've been in?
That's a difficult question. I think the more I see, the more like they actually become similar. I think, like entrepreneurship started a lot. Silicon Valley was like really distant from what we had here. But now, especially with everyone working remotely, I feel like all those words are kind of coming together, and the gap is not that far between, what we have in Brazil and in the US. Of course, I haven't been in the US in a while. I haven't worked there in a while to compare personally. But I think the differences are a lot about maybe opportunities. So in the US, because at the same time, the US, you have more, maybe more investors and more, but at the same time, you might have, it's harder to recruit people there because there's so many more companies that you have more competition or things like that. That's kind of the impression I had. But technology wise, I feel like we're not, it's actually kind of the same thing. We all learn, the big companies are, okay, most of them are in the US, but I feel like we have really strong technology companies in Brazil as well.
Mm-hmm. Could each of you tell me your motivation for going back to Brazil and the mechanics of how you did that? And you went back first, right, Deborah?
Yeah, it was an interesting decision to make because, like I went kind of against common sense in a way, because, I had my job as a software engineer working in Silicon Valley, and then I left that behind and came back to Brazil to become an entrepreneur. Like, why would you do that? That's what a lot of people told me. So I think to make the move for me was a process of convincing myself that, I know myself better than other people would think of for me. But for me, I think it's two main reasons. One is like in the personal sense, I felt like I wanted to come back to Brazil. I love living in Brazil. I love the people here. My family's here. So I think the personal side was pretty big for me. But also, I always had this idea that I wanted to, as in my professional career, to give back to Brazil in a way, like the US, there are so many people looking at problems in the US. I feel like there could be more people looking at problems to solve in Brazil. So and technology can really work in every area and everywhere. So I had this flexibility to come back and still like have a lot of opportunities here. So I think those are the two main things. One is personal and one is professional.
João.
Sure. So the question is, how did I decide to come back to Brazil? The mechanics?
Yeah. What was your motivation? Like, what was your thought process? And then how did you make it happen?
Okay. So when we finished college, we knew at some point we wanted to be entrepreneurs and start a business together, but we just didn't have the let's say the stars didn't align. We didn't have a great idea. We didn't have funding. So we didn't even, I don't think we felt ready to start a company at that point. So we just followed on different career paths. And there's Deborah here, but we also have a third co-founder, which is Mateus. And Mateus also went to school in the US, then he worked for McKinsey. And then Mateus was, I guess, the one the most dissatisfied about his own career choice. He was super overworked, didn't feel a connection of purpose. And then he started asking me, well, I mean, we started Brasa, we could start something else together. We know we like to work together, we want to be entrepreneurs, we want to have social impact. And I said, well, yes, let's try to think about something. But, I just became partner in a multinational food company. I can't just leave everything. Let's mature this idea. Let's at least try to agree on a couple of things. I guess first, we need to have a technical co-founder, and I'd like that person to be Deborah. And then secondly, I think we need to basically agree on what's the product we're going to come up with. I don't want to arrive in Brazil and find out we disagree about what we're doing. And then thirdly, there should be some indication of funding interest, because I don't think we should just burn our savings and then just run into a wall just because. And then he called me, I think that was February 27th at 5 p.m. Chicago time of 2018. And then he said, I have those three things. I called Deborah, I convinced her to come. I have a cool idea for a product. And then he told me a lot about healthcare and primary care. And then also there's already X, Y, and Z investors that want to do a pre-seed. We already have a valuation. We don't even have a team. We don't have a deck, but we have a pre-valuation. And I was like, wow, that's insane. So from that point, I didn't really have an excuse. I guess I could be, I did have a great career path ahead of me at Kraft Heinz, and I was not dissatisfied about my job. I was learning a lot. I was getting promoted, getting money, learning, but at the end of the day, for me, there's, I guess, two things that are really important. One of them is purpose, and any kind of work that you really do with excellence, you're gonna be overworked. You're gonna work longer hours. You're gonna work weekends. If it's really important for you, you're gonna work too much. And at some point, you need a justification for working too much. You need a sense of mission, purpose. Why am I where do I want to get to? And for me, that sense of purpose comes with social impact. Me telling myself of believing or even measuring that I'm actually changing other people's lives for better. That's really what gives me purpose and puts me at my highest performance. So I didn't really feel that at Kraft Heinz, because at the end of the day, I was really selling food. And obviously there's a lot of good social impact from selling food, or, indirect even social impact from employing thousands of people around the world. But I don't know, just healthcare is you save someone's life in front of you. It's way more obvious and tangible. So for me, I would have a stronger sense of purpose than healthcare. And also in terms of people, I felt like the Kraft Heinz folks that were within a work culture that was a lot managing companies in the 90s. And I wanted to be in an environment that was primarily led by technology, and their decisions were primarily led by financial analysis. And I wanted to be in a business that was, in my vision, the business of the future, which is making decisions based on technology and having a tech mentality and way of managing and sprints and all that. So I felt like I was lagging behind in terms of work culture. I wasn't in the most on the edge in terms of what's the latest best practices. So when I looked at the opportunity of working with Deborah and Mateus, I really saw that. I really, people that I admired, it was really obvious to me how stellar they are and how much more I would learn with them.
Perfeito. Então agora vamos trocar para o português e entrar.
Perfect. Let's switch to Portuguese and let's talk about this venture that you've launched in Brazil. So let's start with a very basic question. So what is a health tech? Great. So Healthtech is a company that uses technology to apply in the healthcare sector. So health is a very complex field. It can be applied in different parts of health, but it's a technology company to solve health issues. So now, João, what is the focus of within this huge university that you have? What is your focus? Brief context of the health system in Brazil. Okay, so we have SUS, the Brazilian uh, Public Health Service. More than 3/4 of the population access the system. Then you have the supplementary health, where less than a fourth of Brazilians can access, mainly because of money. And within this system, either public or private, we have different levels of attention, of service, basically. Something that is spread it a lot in Brazil, outside Brazil, it's primary care, which is the team that in Brazil we call the family doctor or strategic family health. It's a team that is specialized and 80% of the things that you're gonna suffer in terms of health in your life, from the time you're a baby until you are older, from migraines, depression, and the prenatal care for your kids. And in Brazil, we realized that we don't have this culture. And we realized that that's a problem for the system, because when 73% of the people, when some of the time, when people go to the urgency in a hospital, we have the system is overwhelmed. And healthcare uh, um, insurance, it's very expensive. When you go to health, to primary care, and before getting into secondary and 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 on, realized that what we needed in Brazil was primary care to reduce waste and price inflation. That's where when we decided to focus in primary care. So we decided to start subscription B2B service for companies. So we will sell together with the technology of apps and data analysis to companies, so companies could take care of their staff. So for it was a good idea for companies who didn't have enough money to buy a health insurance for their employees. It was good for them, and also for large companies that we would be good for them to avoid waste. Like, for example, Boticário, one of our largest clients, a bank in São Paulo. So how did you research the problem of healthcare in Brazil in general? You were gonna start a venture, but how did you realize what was the pain of your client, and how did you assess the problem that you wanted to solve, and how did you decided to go deeper in these issues? So first of all, we analyze the system. We have public and private health system. The private health care may be expensive, but may not be great. But if you ask someone, the last time you used your healthcare system, how was it? So you go to the emergency care, you are there to talk to a doctor who never seen you before. You talk to them by 10 minutes. They're not gonna solve your problem during that appointment. They're gonna refer you to the next level. And when you get all these problems together, we were talking about access, quality of service, quality of experience. And we start looking at different countries who have already solved these problems. Like the gold standard is the UK, the NHS, their health system. Their primary care is very successful. Their derivatives, you can think about Canada, Australia, But other countries like the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, with a very strong primary care culture. And they managed to solve the problems that I've just mentioned. Talking to a doctor that don't know you, you have to be jumping from doctor to solve your problems. Takes so long to be seen by the doctor, quality and cost. Primary care was a solution in other countries, not only for the private sector, the public sector, but also to the private sector. One medical in the US or Cleveland, they have a large network, Kaiser Permanente. We have very good primary care cases in the private sector in the world. So the idea is to get into the pain for what? For the user, who's the person with a health issue, but also to the source of payment. They cannot stand our prices going up all the time. So we had to figure out which pain we're going to try to solve. So we started going after international benchmarks. And then that's how we came up with the solution we brought to the market. Perfect. One question, Deborah. I read that with the acquisition of Cuidas by Alice, one of the attractiveness was the technical talent. So can you tell me a little bit of how you manage, especially in the beginning, to bring this sort of talent and put together a team that was such an important good and valuable good? Recruiting good people, for me, that was the most difficult part of this venture. First of all, well, starting in the beginning, we don't have a well-known brand name. You don't have enough money to pay a very strong salary. The first people that you bring in, they are buying into your idea. And I think that's the beginning of most ventures. So, and then you start exploring your own network, like Gabriel, who was the first person I hired. And he was the CDO of Cuidas. I was the CDO, then he became the CDO. And he's been a good friend for years, since I was doing the math Olympics when I was in high school. So I started with my own network to bring first people that we've hired, those who would buy into the idea. And then you start taking advantage of the network, LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. But you have to guarantee a couple of things. First of all, competitive wages, that's important. But you have to be able to sell the idea to the person you're trying to hire. So how working at your company is going to add to this person's career and to their life. So we have to bring together and align your interest with theirs. So, and then you have to start thinking about a company culture where people will feel good about when they work there, and to have process to help you to identify the talents that you're looking for. So it's a very complex process. You have to talk to many people before hiring one. It's like a B sort of work, little by little. Not only just bring the person that makes sense to the position, until you bring the person that makes sense to the position. So as far as I understand from your previous comments, Ron, that your personal motivation was very important, and what Deborah just said about the difference and what has that go beyond the money. And my question is actually about funding. How did you manage to raise the financial resources that you needed, not to spend all the money you've saved in your lives, and how to to have money to bring good talent? So great question, Jason. I could spend hours talking about it, but I will try to be very brief. Fundraising is a very complex topic. I think that most of our entrepreneurs, colleagues, they ask us about that. It's a science and it's also art. We were privileged to be able to build good networks in the past. So at the end of the day, fundraising, raise capital for a risky project. Usually, the investor is not betting on the idea, they're betting on you. Like you don't bet on a horse, you bet on the jockey. So you start testing the idea. I've heard around market saying that there's a good idea is worth 10 cents. Everybody have good ideas, so it's worth nothing. So who is gonna make it happen? Who's gonna have resources and network and social and emotional possibilities to do so, a capacity to do so, and to go through everything they have to go through to find the right way to grow and deliver value to the investor. So we were lucky to be in contact with people that were a lot senior than us, especially through Fundação. People could they knew us and they could see our delta. They said, okay, we know João, Deborah, and Mateus, they learn fast, they test fast, they are mature enough, and they're gonna grow with the challenge. More than, okay, I have this idea, a $1 million idea here that's gonna work. No, we have hypotheses, but we have a market that maybe we can attack this way or the other, we're not so sure, but we are three people that the more experienced people than our investors, they had followed us throughout our lives. They were choosing who's the jockey, who's the entrepreneur I want to put money on. And I think that's true to most of other companies. I mean, that especially in the early stages. The idea is not worth much, but the first round of investors, you raise money with friends and family who had the privilege that some of our friends from Fundação Estudar, they had been invested by Kazakh, is the largest venture capital fund. It's a reference in Latin America. Creditas, Alice, and these investors that were angel investors, they received money from Kazakh. So they referred us to Kazakh, and Kazakh got to know us and decided to put money on us. And the second round of investment is something else. You've tested, now you have to show results. And what have you done with the time that you had, with the money that you had? Did you had traction? Were you mature to test? Do you have clear metrics? Can you prove your results? Can you show the way to grow more? Is your client satisfied? Is the client happy with you? Has not, the second round of investment has nothing to do with the first round investment. Third round, even more different. You need to be already close to your break even. You have to have it very clear how you're going to generate profit, how you're going to generate cash. Different stage. This is a very, it's a very long topic, but if you want to start a company, there's some people that say that if you ask money, you're gonna get slapped. You need to be surrounded by your mentors, to have people who follow you for a long time, people who trust you, and people who are willing to bet on you. Because after slapping you right and left, they decide to give you money. So it's a question that is my question, but also a question from the audience. That's the last question before we start with a question from our audience directly. We have many people here with us. Okay, so the question to Deborah is, what's the difference between health plan, health insurance, and health management? What is preventive health? And if you have a plan for that. Yes, very complex topic. I'll try to summarize. Traditional health insurance, health plans, especially in Brazil, we ended up using it reactively. I only use them when I'm sick. I go to the emergency room when I'm sick. I have a headache. I'm go to see a specialized doctor. When we talk about the health manager, the idea is to offer not only our health services, but think about managing your health, coordinating your health. What's the strategy throughout your life, horizontally speaking, in primary care? So the idea is not only to have different boxes where we can go to different doctors' offices and appointments to see health as a more integrated field. Your healthcare professionals, they're going to talk among each other about you. They're going to refer to one doctor or the other. They will follow it throughout your life. And I think that is one of the main concepts of primary care. It's a wholesome type of care. That's why Cuidas and Alice had so many things in common. Both are focusing in primary, we're focusing in primary care, and preventive care has to do with primary care. Only primary care and preventive care. No, preventive care is part of our primary care because the primary care tries to promote health, try to attack all problems in the population, not looking at the disease or the symptoms. You talk about the person's social context, family history in terms of health, where do they live, how's their family, and everything can have an impact in someone's health. Preventive health, we can think about, okay, you are an adult woman, you need to do your pap smear every, I don't know, every year. So everything is part of the primary care. So this is a topic that we can talk for hours, but yeah. Thank you. Now I'm gonna ask a question from one of our students, Ariadne, and then I will go back to Professor Cavian. Ariadne, I found wonderful the approach of preventing and promoting health. I saw that you have plans for companies. How do you assess uh, the how is there how the companies have received your company? Actually, we haven't launched the product for companies. We are doing like a pilot. Before launching it nationally, we try to test. We do the minimum viable product. That's the minimum viable product that we need to test before taking it to the street. We are testing with more than 10 companies, and we have good and bad feedback because we have different profiles, and we try to understand more and more. A concept that we have an innovation in terms of product is not try to find a solution for everyone. It's important to have focus, problem to be to have it very clear who is your final user, your early adopter, what is the profile of the person we're trying to solve this problem for. And then we start to understand who is the ideal profile? Who has a fit, or what company has a fit and what company doesn't? Companies are in different stages of maturity. When we have an innovation, we solve a problem at a time. So, and then we, for example, Nubank started with a middle to higher to high income in a certain neighborhood in São Paulo. Now, my mother, who lives at the west side of Rio, has Nubank because they focus at a very, they focus in a very specific audience or user, and then they spread it. They really figure out a way to broaden it. So we, first of all, we need to be good to our focus target. Now I'm going to pass the floor to Professor Cavião. He has a PhD in nurse. He's a nurse professional, and Professor Cavião, your question. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today with you to hear about stories from and Deborah and their and how they contributed to the process of care service and how we see healthcare as something more holistic. When you think about healthcare and think about promoting health, how do you can see that through the startup you managed to improve the quality of the population? João, can start? You have all the numbers. That's easy. Great question. Actually, this is a topic. Alice has been doing it better than Alice used to, because there's a previous question, how do you measure a quality of health? And there are some international standards, like Eurocall is one of them for quality of life and quality of health. But every chronic issue has their single index, for example, for diabetes or and so on and so forth. So what you do to measure all that, you get the population at a certain point of time before they started working with you, you assess their health quality at that time, and then you do some other check-ins throughout time, and then you keep following up. But you need to measure some specific points. You're measuring quality of what? Quality of mental health, of nutrition, exercise, sleep, diabetes, controlling diabetes, depression. There are many ways to measure quality, but you need to determine a couple of things. It's very difficult to mix different subjects like sleep with diabetes and depression. It's hard to do these correlations. We have to assess them separately. And also you need a lead time. You need to have a horizontal follow-up until you can get to your conclusions. Just to add to what João had to say, like health is very hard to measure. But also, I can tell you that it's not the only way that we can see the progress. At Cuidas, since the beginning, we measure progress by, and we were inspired by stories from our patients, stories of mental health, people that came with deep depression, like pregnant women, and their obstetricians were on vacation at the time. So metrics are important, but I also wanted to talk about how good it is to listen to the stories of people who were happy with the sort of care that you are offering. Great. I'm going to try to bring together some of the questions that I have here. And if you have enough time, because you're going to close at 8 p.m. Brazil time. So questions that I have here, João Calixto, Mary Barreto, and Bruna. They all have questions about service availability. If you can implement Cuidas in different cities in Brazil, if you have the materials available, like information materials, could you tell us, okay, Cuidas now is Alice, right? If you're looking for a service, a healthcare service, you go after Alice. Alice today has a product that focuses in the city of São Paulo. Throughout this year, Alice is going to start their national launching. If you're not from São Paulo, you need to wait a few more months. Go to visit the website, alice.com.br, and that's it. Thank you. Cavion, your final question? Actually, you have the final question. I'm very curious. How was it to employ technology, improve health? João and Deborah, you didn't know much about the health care area. How was it? I think it was very challenging and rewarding as well. For me, someone from technology, I really like the impact that we can have with technology in the healthcare system. But it's hard to have both parts talking to each other. We have our minds in developing softwares, but then we have to talk to doctors and nurses to think about a product together, and they need to learn about our culture, and we have to learn about their culture in order to bring those skills together. We have a cultural challenge because health has been away from technology for a while, but now we have health tech booming all over the place. So great, fantastic. Right, I think we have a few more minutes for our final questions. We have a lot of people interested in technology. So this crystal ball, Deborah, how can technology improve health service, and how do you see this in the next few years? How can this help in improving the preventive health care in the next few years? Yeah, it's a very complex question. I think technology has impact differently, but gradually. Important thing in terms of technology is automate repetitive work. Like instead of doing crunching the numbers with a HP calculator, we're gonna do it in software. Okay, storing digital data. Most of the majority of the healthcare system in Brazil, they use paper. They're not automated yet. But once we automate and store data, we have to think about the experience. The product today is not only having a website, but having the best experience for someone using the site. And health has always been a bad experience for most of people. People have to wait in the waiting room. Bringing technology to improve the user at one end is also important. And then that's already, we have already making a difference that instead of going to the emergency care and waiting for hours, I call my nurse contact. We use using our app. I don't know. So going to different levels like artificial intelligence, of more automated stuff. Now we are moving into how can we help the decision-making process of the assessment of a doctor. When you do the assessment of the, how can we decide what is the best outcome there? So that's something that is in the beginning. We still have a lot of a long way to go. And now there's another thing that is wearables. Measure your heart frequency using your watch. Another thing that allow healthcare could be efficient remotely. I think those are some of the points that all those points that make a difference. So wonderful. I'd like to thank you both so very much for your participation. I think that I'd like to highlight something that you both said. Do something you love. You both are passionate about what you do, and that motivates you throughout difficult times. And then the second thing is the importance of networking. You don't start with a huge network of contacts, but you have to keep feeding and going back to your network. So I'd like to thank you both for agreeing to be here with us. Two people that I've met. You're growing your network, but you never forget where you came from. So thank you so much. Have a good evening and hope to see you soon. Next event in our Global Hub, April 6th and then May 12th. Good evening. Bye-bye.